Welcome to the ThisAbility Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team ThisAbility. So here we are, another race ramble, another amazing experience. This time it was the magnificent adventure race, first ever done in New Zealand, South Island. Start and finish was in the town of Lumsden. And I think the course was open for 6.5 days. And this was a pretty amazing experience. So luckily, we've got our whole crew here, as well as our special guest, Tomas Diaz, who was doing commentary and did a fantastic job doing commentary during the race, keeping friends and family up to date on what the heck we were doing right and wrong. Plenty of content. During the race. So Tomas, thanks for joining us and help keeping us on track because we've got a lot we wanted to get into about this race, and a lot of people have asked questions online, and you got a lot of questions, so we're going to dive into that. We've got Caitlin and Andrea, our normal kind of core team is here once again, and the new guy, Nick Hurff. So we've known Nick for quite a while doing his races with Rev 3, and we've seen him on courses many times racing against him and chasing him and leapfrogging him. And somehow we got roped up to do this magnificent race with him, as well as the upcoming race in Morocco. So Nick is a welcomed addition to the team. So Nick, why don't you, since our audience doesn't know you too well, like maybe introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get into this dumb stuff that we do called adventure racing?
Yeah, so my name's Nick Hurff, and I race direct for Rev 3 and run around and race a bunch in the woods with everybody as well. Yeah, I got into adventure racing maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was getting out of the Army and had some buddies doing one of these, and they got lost as anything. So they, messaged something on Facebook, and I was like, yeah, I'll teach you how to do map and compass. And next thing I know, I'm racing a 24-hour with them and got hooked. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the sport.
And I can't remember, have you ever done a race this big, this crazy, this out there? I mean, this was your big,
I
big
mean,
race, right?
this long of a race I've done before, like Canada one year was about this
Yeah.
long. I've done Ecuador and different things, but I mean, this is a big race, like big race, because there wasn't other races we've gone up real high and different things, Alpine and stuff, but this one's different, very different. Just
Yeah, you've never gone up high with your bike and your pack raft and
yeah,
in a hailstorm. Yeah. While
that's
tromping
pretty
through
cool.
prickle bushes, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, cool. Well, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming on. I guess I wanted to put this race into a little bit of perspective before we dive into the details of our experience. I think a lot of people listen to this podcast and or especially people in the United States are very familiar with Jason Magnus and Chelsea Magnus, Bend Racing. They're, probably the America's top team when it comes down to world championships and stuff. So they not only are super high performers, but they're also have an ARWS race known as was it the United States' toughest race or America's toughest race? So they're known to put on really hard, burly races. Like this is not the type of race you want to have a beginning race. They're very keen on that. Yes, there is risk, but you shouldn't join the race unless you have the experience and judgment to either move forward or not. It is up to you to make your own decisions. We are not going to put guardrails and handrails and parachutes and all that. You are on your own. Don't sign up if you can't handle it. So that's kind of their mantra versus a lot of races that are very welcoming to entry level racers. There's lots of bailouts, lots of supports, lots of rules, things like that. So let's start off with that. So it's Jason, and then he's got his twin brother, Andy, that lives in New Zealand, who has started the Fear Society, which it's what Fjordlands Endurance and Adventure Racing. Is that right, Andrea?
Yes.
Here. So they're known to put on really hard races, mostly row gaining, mostly foot, not a lot of bike stuff, but row gaining and paddling in some of New Zealand's most rugged terrain. And from anybody that has been adventure racing a while, New Zealand is the mecca of adventure racing. It's where like just the best racers come from, and just everybody there is just one level above everybody else in the world, I think. So either way, you get these two brothers together that like doing really big, hard things, and they put their minds together to put on a really big, hard race, their style, the way they like it. They're also very environmentally minded. So a lot of this race was not a lot of swag, not a lot of stuff. Even they were worried about their carbon footprint. So they literally like skipped having TAs in some situations and just had us carry the pack rafts on the bikes so that they could skip a TA and save some gas. And they even planted like thousands of trees to offset the carbon footprint of the race. So some of the hardship that we went through was in it was in the best interest of our environment. So I like to think of it as a positive as opposed to when we were cussing him out carrying our pack rafts and our bikes up hills. So either way, this was a really, really tough race. Many folks that we talked to said it was harder both physically and navigationally than the World Championships in Ecuador that we just got done doing. Just to give you an idea of the scope of this race, this was a really, really tough race. It may be one of our hardest ever. So that's the context surrounding what we're about to get into. But I guess, Caitlin, the drama of this entire experience started with you. It's like, I thought everything was going to go fine in this race. We just got done with Ecuador. This is going to be a piece of cake. And then you show up missing something.
Yeah, so everyone knows the hardest part of the race is actually getting to the starting line. And I thought I was safe going through Houston with only one connection and a 7-hour layover. But of course, the one day I'm traveling is like the big ice storm of the year for Houston, Texas. And I made it to New Zealand okay. Bags did not make it. And long story short, both me and Mary Chandler arrived in New Zealand sans gear bag or bike. But so it was a little stressful. Thankfully, the Bend, Oregon team and the Fear Youth team were able to supply us with bikes and pack raft gear and everything we needed so that we could actually make it to the starting line, which was phenomenal. So it was definitely a stressful start to the race. I mean, the Saturday before race start on Sunday, we're trying to source gear and meanwhile there's a pre-race meeting going on and check-in, and it was not an ideal situation at all. But thankfully both myself and Mary made it to the starting line with gear, with bikes, and we're able to start the race. But definitely not a fun way to spend the first couple days in country, before the race start.
I just want to say how well Caitlin handled all of that. Like just, the month and a half before when we were in Ecuador, she's like, someone else's gear didn't arrive. And like, I don't know how they could do a race without their gear. And then just this next race, she has no gear and she's cool as a cucumber. And, she just handled it really well. And even during the race, like, I don't think you ever complained, except for the helmet, about not having all of your stuff. Like, I just think you did really well. So
yeah, it was definitely challenging. I mean, you can do it. Obviously, I did. It wasn't ideal at all, but we got through the race together. And so anyway, really thankful to the Fear Youth team for really stepping in and giving me some first rate gear to do the race. So that was fantastic.
Yeah, a lot better than the Kmart bike you were looking at.
Yeah, that would have been disaster.
$225 includes assembly.
50-pound bike. Yeah,
that's right, because you went to like every gear store in all of Queenstown sourcing stuff before we figured out and I guess that's the other thing is like going into a race normally, we're focused on getting our own gear sorted, and then usually the race director's trickling out information. Maybe it's the race book, maybe it's the race brief. It's all the final little details that they basically hide from you until the last 24 hours. Like half the time you don't even know, like, when am I bike? Where do I put my bike? Where do I put my luggage while we're during race? What about this? What about that? That whole time that we would have been focused on the what about this and what about that, we were focused on shit. We need a throw bag. Where is this going to come from? Where is this? And Caitlin's driving around with Nick in Queenstown looking for stuff. The airport lied to you, saying, "Oh, come, it'll be here, no problem." You get there, they're like, it's still in Houston. But yeah, the Fear Youth team, they really came together, and Finn and his family, they just really went out of their way. And I don't know if it's because we spent so much time at Ecuador. But the funny thing is also, not only did they help, but like we went to lunch and talked to the diner that we were eating, the Route 66 place or Route 6, whatever it was. And we asked the waitress, like, do you know anybody in this town with a bike that's like a medium, large size bike? And she was like, let me think. And then she names Finn's mom. It was like, you need to talk to her. I'm like, we're already working with her. And he's like, that if there's anybody in the entire town of Lumsden that can find you a bike, it's her. So it was just hilarious how small of a town it was and how those folks came together and really saved us.
They did. They saved the day.
Okay. So, so let's go back to it. So we're so focused on getting your gear ready. Normally, Caitlin, you're the logistics person, right? You got the race book. You're thinking of the strategy, the overall. You're going to keep us on track, keep us on point, make sure we don't miss things, make sure we take into account our cutoffs. Point
Yeah. So
yeah. So how did
yeah,
that?
I lined up at that race start not having read one word of that race book. Usually I have the race book because I have this like tiny little mini map case that I put the race book in and I clip to my bag and I kind of hold the race book and kind of keep tabs on it. So I hadn't even read one word of it. And usually I kind of look at the map and just have a cursory kind of overview of what the course looks like, just so that we can, strategically plan out, how we're going to get CPs and, potential CPs to skip. And what I completely missed, and I think most of us missed this just with the confusion of the gear sort, is, Jason and Andy did a really good job playing the race so that nobody would get short coursed. And what I mean by that is he assigned point values to each of the CPs. And towards the end of the race, he had about a 2-day stage with basically a canyon section, paddle section, and then a really big orienteering section. But in the orienteering section, which took about 24 to 30 hours, all those points were of minimum value. So the idea was to clear the course essentially up to that point. And then if you were low on time, you could potentially skip the entire orienteering course. Well, we didn't even realize that at all. I think until maybe like midway in the race. We were just, again, so distracted by my gear issue. So I think that kind of, played into some of our strategy choices early on. But as we realized that, I was thinking, wow, this is a really genius course design because, every single team could participate in the race without having to get short course per se, or, move forward in a vehicle in the race. So that was really cool. Unfortunately, we didn't really even think about that was the way the race was planned until kind of midway in the race when we had already skipped some, mandatory CPs. So anyway, that's kind of a lesson learned for me, to, even though it was, the gear was, a major source of distraction there, but to really understand how the race director intends the race to go, and the strategy associated with it. I think we could have done a little bit better placing wise. Have we understood that?
Yeah, I think I tried to make up for Caitlin not being around, and it was like we also made some time to look through the rule book, but we did that at a when we were sitting down eating, and then we got disrupted by socializing. I think, Heidi came over to our table and we kind of just lost sight and didn't really, we just didn't focus enough. Like I remember, like I took really detailed notes at the race brief and we went through it, but even then that was while we were driving. So it's almost like we're constantly multitasking, like at the race brief, we're trying to find gear. And then while we're trying to, and Caitlin was driving for us. So she's driving on the left-hand side of the road, doing a great job. But that's when I'm going over the notes with everybody. And the race was just much different than it usually is. Usually every CP is, created equal. Or if they're not created equal, they're not so far different in point values. So in this race, what they called mandatory points, which were not actually mandatory, but they called them that, really to finish, the only mandatory things were the TAs. But they called them mandatory points, and the mandatory points were worth 100. And then they called the pro points were like harder points, is how I describe them. But then again, in that leg 6, where most all of them were pro points, they were not all difficult. Anyway, what I'm saying, most of the time the pro points were difficult, but they were only worth 10 points. So that's completely opposite of like any race we've done. So I think it just wasn't intuitive, like from the get-go, what we should skip or not skip. And we didn't get all the maps at once. So we got the maps basically a stage at a time, which to me also meant like, well, we're not going to be making decisions on a large scale. We're going to be making them as they come, which was also a mistake because we could have made plenty of decisions knowing the layout of the race without actually seeing the maps. But I think we'd do much better if we had the same format again and knowing what we know now and knowing that I cannot take over that role because Caitlin's much better at it. Anyway, moving on.
One other
There's
thing,
much more to talk about.
They did warn everybody. They thought only 4 or 5 teams would clear the course, and we being a Kiwi race, that there was no way we're clearing this course. So it kind of put it in our head we need to cut something. I think that also did us in a little bit because we didn't know the point structure yet, and we were like, "Oh, we just cut a point, no big deal." I mean, well, it's a 100-pointer, ouch.
So, having said all of that, we have the point system. We have Caitlin not getting the logistics fully in order because she's taking care of her own gear and all that stuff, right? And all of that, the point system, all those extra pro points that were 10 points, and all this thing leads me now to what I would call the big trekking fiasco with the big weather and all that. So, which all of that influenced this, right? So who's gonna talk about that big trek fiasco?
I can talk about that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So from the TA, you kind of had 2 options.
Are you sharing the screen with the?
Yeah, I can go ahead and share, and we can walk through it while we're talking.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Yeah. So the TA is at the bottom of this lake, and from there you have a huge loop that you do. The first half of the loop is on foot, going up over all these kind of mountains up into the Alpine a bit. And then you end up climbing up, I don't even know, 3,000-4,000 feet. And eventually traversing along them. And then you drop down onto a river, paddle the river to the lake, and then you paddle this huge lake for a long time back. The whole thing was going to take, I think, 36 hours was the estimate. So right off the bat from the TA, there were 2 options on route initially. The first one was to hike up a super steep reentrant, just gutting up for a couple thousand feet. The other one was to go flat and then take a trail around. So we did that option. It seemed like both were about equal in time as we ran into another team. And then from there, we wound up hitting a couple CPs along the way. A big thing to remember at this was it was raining when we started. So up higher, the weather's going to get a little bit worse. And again, with the course design, you have to make your own decisions with it. We also had a bothy bag and we had our own bivy sacks and that kind of stuff. So if things got really hairy, we could just bundle up and find cover and kind of get out of the storm a little bit.
And the pack raft. Don't forget.
And the pack raft. Yep. And we're carrying a pack raft. Yep. It's a lot of weight. So we're going up on this. We've been biking most of the day prior, and it's going to go into the dark. So as we're going, we're kind of hitting these ridges along the way. So we hit, I don't even know what CP you're looking at, 7, 8, etc. And then it got to the point to where we were supposed to traverse over, kind of head, man, I can't even tell what direction's what right now. But yeah, we're supposed to kind of head over the high ground, dip down into a low area, and then come up onto these mountains on the other side. And as we were starting to make our way around there, it was dark and we started to get pretty fast winds, like 60-mile-per-hour winds, low visibility. It was turning into sleet and snow and different things like that. And so for us, we were trying to figure out what we're going to do because navigating was getting almost impossible. So knowing where we were at, we decided that we were going to try to shoot to CP12, which
by
is
the way, for those, I'm sorry to interrupt you. For those viewing the map right now, the disability track is shown in brown.
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah, I've got.
Those looking at the map, for those looking at the map, the disability path is shown in brown.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Okay.
brown, and the intended route, I believe, is the pink route. And then I also have Sardine Racing, which was the winners. I put their route on there just to see kind of what they did.
Yep.
So as you're telling this story, like people can kind of get an idea of,
Correct.
if they're watching, they can get an idea of how he messed this up. But I guess we were going to spend a lot of time on this because this, like, this switched our race from being like, we're going to push and try to do the best we can to, holy crap, we blew it. Let's just enjoy ourselves because we can't recover from this.
Yeah.
Leading up to it. But so if anybody wants to, they're listening to the podcast, go back and watch YouTube and you'll be able to see the three-dimensional visual of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So so if you're looking at it kind of, right where his cursor is, slightly before that, we made the decision that we were going to try to push north and go to CP12, which is in the low ground by the river. So all the other CPs were optional, 10 points each. The other one's worth more. So our thought was, with the visibility, trying to traverse all the way over and along that high ground, which was even higher over there with the weather, we'd save time and just push into 12. As we started to make our way over, it wound up getting pretty much low visibility. So we were holding our altimeter. We're holding our altimeter to try to keep the same exact altitude and just contour all the way over and around. And as we did it, we held it for a while, and we misjudged our distance. So we got a glimpse of a town in the distance, which we shot a resection off of. It was off the map, but we kind of knew generally it was north. And from there, we thought we were a little bit further north than we were. And so we started to try to descend in, and we were starting to get cliffed out. So we then started traversing to the left and then heading down and descending into that reentrant. As we got in, we actually made it down to the river bed, which was flowing, but not too deep. And we made our way down through that for a bit. And we hit a spot that we might have been able to get down, maybe not. It was a little sketchy. However, knowing we still had to descend like another, like 2,400 feet or 2,500 feet of elevation drop through there. Continuing in there was a recipe to maybe get cliffed out. So we started trying to find ways to get up and out. And that's where you can see all the squiggles, was us playing around trying to find a way out. At that point, we kept seeing these little cliffs, and we thought maybe we can climb up and over. But again, if you think you can, maybe you can't get down and then you're cliffed out. So it got to the point for us that we can't see anything around us. And it's now like 5 a.m. ish, like 4:45. Sunrise is at 6:30. And somebody I think it might have been Caitlin or Andrea, made the decision or brought the idea up of like, hey, why don't we just sleep for like an hour and a half, wait till sunrise, then find a way out. And so we did. We found a place where we're sheltered and relatively dry, and we just shivered in some bivy sacks for a while because it was below freezing for sure. It was cold.
It was really cold.
And so then when we woke up the next morning, we got a text showing where we were from the staff, which is pretty close. We thought we were maybe another like 300 meters down than where we were. Maybe our altimeters drifted a little bit, but in that same reentrant. So we're pretty on relatively for the low visibility we had of where we thought we were to where we actually were. But yeah, so we started descending out, and then Caitlin saw this path on the other side that we eventually took to get out. What's hard to see from this is that there's cliff bands all over the green. So pretty much anywhere you see the green trees, there's cliff bands over the whole thing.
Yep.
Anywhere from 10 to 20 meter high cliff bands all over. And you have a ton of these cliffs that aren't even on the map. So when you look at 20-meter contour intervals, you're looking at like 66 feet that's not depicted. And so there's just all these cliffs all over the place that we weren't seeing at all. Looking back here at kind of this topography, the move would have been to move further up the reentrant and then cross and go up, and try to find a way around that way. But as you can see, you even see cliff bands kind of all over there on the left side up high. And so, so really making this route navigation is difficult. Talking to Andy after about it, he was saying that they get to the point to where they can really try to read between the lines, where they're seeing like micro little squiggles, and they can try to tell if there's maybe cliff bands they don't see in there and things like that. But yeah, definitely switching into, us relatively flatlanders out on the East Coast to heading into big mountains. Same thing in Expedition Canada, I noticed too, was when you get 20-meter contours, it's a very, very different style of navigation. And when the mountains are that big, I mean, you're going super high peaks and drops and valleys. It gets complex, but that's pretty much, we wound up making our way up and out and dropping into CP11.
Well,
Yeah,
I want to say a little bit more about our original decision to drop points. And I think if you're watching on YouTube, this even shows that it looks easy. It makes you think, why would they turn back? And what's so bad about that? But, the weather was a big factor, but also the lack of any trails whatsoever. We're not used to that at all. And then when we got cold and it's windy and blustery, we can't see any of the high points anymore. And we would have had to navigate just by compass and however far we think we're going, and judging by all these, contour intervals that you might see things on the map that are there, but not in real life. Or no, I'm sorry, in real life and not on the map. Anyway, when we stopped and we're like, what should we do here? Chip was the first person to say, I think we should skip 9 and 10. And I think Caitlin and I was our jaw dropped probably.
Yeah, my jaw dropped to the ground. Chip
never of the race and Chip skipping points. There is something wrong. We were going to die. And I think Caitlin, you asked, are you confident you can navigate us off this cliff or this mountain? We're like, no.
No.
Definitive.
Yeah. Not in the dark with no visibility.
And my glasses were completely fogged up and trashed. I can't see the map. And luckily Nick's got good eyes. He's watching the map, and it was like everything was just going off the rails.
But I feel like we all lacked confidence, in part because we hadn't been in that environment before, and it was taxing us. We were being pushed using all the tools we have to use, and we're being taxed physically too. We're carrying more weight than ever, and we're on this steep stuff. And anyway, just deciding to drop the points, that was actually pretty easy. But then I think we kind of fed off of our own fear a little bit. I was not feeling confident. And then, doing all this scaling of steep terrain where if you trip or if you slip, you could really actually hurt yourself and need to wait for, someone to come get you, which would be at least the next day because the conditions were so bad. I think a lot of that, it's just, I want everyone who's listening to understand what's going through your head instead of just, us calmly talking about, we got cliffed out here.
Yeah. And the weather was really bad, and we haven't been in a situation like that. And I know I was personally nervous because my rain gear sucked, because I had this $30 jacket that I just picked up from the store in Queenstown. I didn't have my good rain gear. So I was probably colder than I would normally be, and a little more nervous about being wet and up in these 70-mile-an-hour winds for an extended period of time, and on top of that with the nav, and I think just, in the back of our minds, we thought that, we're not clearing this course anyway, so I think all of that fed into the decision to go down to CP12. And I think we all thought this is going to be easy. We'll just go down. I think we just thought, we'll just go down. It'll be cool. And we're not going to, clear anyways, and of course we hadn't read the race book really. So we didn't realize about the orienteering points were only worth 2 points, but anyway, a lot of that fed into the decision, and I don't regret the decision, at all. But I do, in hindsight, I was talking, I think, to Nick about it. There is something to say for going off the intended race director's route, because then you really don't know what you're walking into. Right. And that's kind of what we did.
I want to add something. When you were on this reentrant, that's when also Jason called me out of the blue to let me know about the situation of you guys, and he was trying to contact you and everything else, and he sent you those messages. His message was, they need to get out of there. That's what basically what he was saying.
Yeah,
they're like these 20-meter contour lines. They're gonna get cliff out all over the place. Even if you continue north towards the CP12. Jason said, no, they need to get out of there, up the mountain again, and then down again.
We didn't know how to get out of there. Literally, we got to the point where we were cliffed out up or down. And that's when we finally stopped. We're like, we don't know where to go. We literally didn't know where to go. We were going down, cliffed out, going up, cliffed out. I mean, I was kind of like, damn, how are we gonna get out?
Wasn't just that, like we're climbing up wet, muddy terrain. Like Caitlin, you slid down a couple times. I thought you were going off the cliff. Like it was actually getting dangerous.
Yeah.
And we're physically exhausted at this point. We're mentally exhausted. We're scared. We're wet. We're cold. We don't have a solution, and everything we're trying is not working. And yeah, it was like we just need to get some sleep. When we found that little cave, it was like let's just lay down and get some sleep and get back on track. So on the screen now, for those of you who are navigators, this is what I believe this is the I think they used Cal Topo for their maps, and I think it was this scanned Topo overlay. Because Nick, this is what it looked like on the maps, right?
I think so. Yeah, check the contour intervals.
Well, I turned off
20.
the contours, so I'm pretty sure this is 20 because it's in meters. And
Okay.
it looks like I like this 1500 as we came around the corner. I remember we needed to follow 1500 for the east for a little bit while it curves back
Yeah.
around. And then we saw the lights and we're like moths to the light. Like we just like, let's just descend. This looks amazing. So this looks
because if you look, I mean, 300 meters is there. Like if we were moving so slow going around, we really didn't know our distance. So from where we started to descend down, we thought we were a little bit north of that 1432.
Yeah, I agree. We thought we were
And
right
so, so if you slide up just slightly, we thought we were north of that 1432. And so we thought descending down a little bit, we'd maneuver around the cliff band. So we tried to go right a bit. And then we thought we were up here in this cliff band on the map. And then as we worked around, we kept hitting cliff bands. So we thought we were on these ones here and dropping in. So we thought we were kind of actually down more near the burn in short burn, where in reality we were up further and we dropped early and just almost no visibility except for that one break to kind of see some light out there. I mean, we're just using altimeters and direction, and we didn't really have a good pace count of where we were, which is difficult with the terrain. It was just tough math.
Yeah,
really
a few things I think were really difficult or pretty much impossible to rely on completely. Pace count for sure, because we didn't know what was in between here or there, and then our altimeters were changing constantly. Like as often as we were resetting them, they would go out of whack because the weather was changing so much. And a couple of times in the race, we relied on our altimeters when we really shouldn't have. So that made it really tricky. But I also want to mention that we tried to get out and we woke up and we said we'd try one more time. And we did try one more time. Then we decided, when Caitlin saw the path on the other side, and we're just like, we just have to bite the bullet and go up and over this ridge. And then we got the call from the race director, which we have never gotten a call on our tracker. Like, wow, what's that? We're like looking around like someone's calling us. I think that is pretty telling that we were in quite a pickle when the race director messages you. And the message said, confirm that you are at the short in short burn. And we even had like a little bit of a hard time like deciphering what they were meaning by this cryptic message. But then I'm like, no, we're by the short in short burn.
And we thought we were by the burn in short burn. Southwest of the short, like it was like mind blown. How are we here?
But we had already decided to give up what we were doing and go up and over. But then and I don't know how much longer. Well, Nick sent a message back, basically said like confirming we're in short burn and telling them that we're going to go on to CP 11. Because that was our plan at the time. Since we gave up going to 12, we might as well, since we have to go up that way anyway, we might as well get 11. And then we got another message from them that said, basically short burn, whatever that direction is not recommended. Like they wanted to verify that we were not going to keep doing what we were trying. So I appreciated that they did that. And I just thought, wow, we have really done it now. Like we've really blown it, like our race is over. And it just began,
Yeah, Jason did tell me that when he talked to me that he wanted to communicate with you guys and tell you to not go there.
Yeah. Going down that's the reason we went there. They're like, let's get off the mountain. We'll hit the river. We'll just follow the river down. We'll be fine. That works in the Appalachian Mountains. That does not work in New Zealand. It was getting progressively worse and steeper and thicker. Like there
And
is zero
slow, just so slow.
zero
Yeah.
chance.
Rappel with our throw bags.
Yeah. Yeah, we needed rock climbing equipment and a chainsaw.
Is this a time to talk about that other team that got cliffed out?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that it could get worse.
Yeah, so another team actually slept on a cliff. They climbed up over something and couldn't get down, and they couldn't go up, and they were literally in a bivy sack on a cliff. And another team saw them in daylight and eventually took a picture of it, which is pretty wild. And I believe that they had messaged, and these were experienced racers as well, and experienced in the mountains. So they weren't, they're a very experienced team. And so they even got into a pretty bad predicament just with the terrain and the low visibility and everything. And just made a decision that wasn't the right decision, which is easy. I mean, at one point, I remember Caitlin and I were looking at like a 10-foot thing that was like, I don't know, like a 5.5. It was like, yeah, we can scurry up that and then get past this cliff band and go. But right there, I mean, we decided not to, because what if we can't get down? And it's tempting sometimes and you don't think about it. And so they got up in a precarious situation, and they even wound up messaging, I believe, the race director, just let them know, hey, this is where we're at. This is the situation we're in. When it's light out, we'll let you know if we can get out or not, but just kind of giving you a heads up. And so, yeah, other teams had fun too.
Yeah.
It's always nice to know we're not the only ones, that
Yeah.
that aren't looking like pros out there, even though we've got all of this experience.
Mhm.
But I know we do better next time. I know. I just feel like I got to do that race again because we've learned so much. And I don't know. Anyway, we did finally get down because we went up and over, and then we made it even harder on ourselves to get to the road that we could actually see. Anyway, we also considered at that time skipping CP11, except that our tracker was like out of battery pretty much. It was like 16%. And, we messaged the device itself tells you to turn off the tracking when it gets below a certain thing. So we got yet another message from the tracker that said, basically, turn me off. So we did. We turned off the tracking part. And then the race organizers messaged us and said, can you turn that back on, please? So we turn it back on, and they say somehow we get a message that they're going to give us a different tracking device when we get to CP11. Because at that time we were still headed towards CP11. And so we got down, and that factored into our decision whether we were going to go get CP11 or not. We felt like we had to go get it now because they were going to switch out trackers with us. So it's just, this is kind of leading into the whole next, how we handle the whole rest of this leg. But anyway, we got down the mountain, and we felt like we had to go to CP11 to get the tracker. And CP11 was kind of a out and back down the river that we could pack raft on, or we could hike back down. It's kind of up to us how much pack rafting of that river we wanted to do. And as we were hiking up to CP11, we could see that it was really low, and it would be a waste of time to even inflate our boats for that. But anyway, we went up to CP11, and the volunteer there was like, I don't have a tracker for you. We're like, we just came up here to get the tracker, or else we might have changed our mind and gone directly to CP12, because we realized at that point we're already running out of time to get the paddle part of the leg done, which we thought we needed to get done during the daylight. So anyway, at CP11, we also confirmed with that volunteer that there was a dark zone for the entire part of the paddle. So just all of this part, I think, was a little bit nebulous, and still is. Like, if you read the race book, it leads you to believe that you might be able to paddle in the dark. But at the TA, we had to sign off that we knew there was a dark zone between, was it 10:30 or 10 and 6:30 in the morning, I think. Either way, in the race brief, they said there was a dark zone, and we had to sign off that there was a dark zone. And then there's this other language in the race booklet. But either way, we were in a hurry to get off the water because we did not want to spend another night cold in the dark, and we didn't want to break the rules. But that sets the stage for how we started this second half of this leg 2, which, was the crux for us. So I don't know if anyone else wants to take over from there, but it's all stuff that played into all of our decisions moving forward.
Let's just say that CP11 is a pro point that worth 10 points, and then all of those paddle points on the lake are worth 100 points each.
Yeah, so we knew they were mandatory points. And so we got on the water. Chip immediately gave the map to Andrea to nav, and then Nick gave the map to me to nav. So both of us were kind of unfamiliar with the maps, right? And so we start paddling, and we get to the lake, and the weather really kicks up, and there are significant waves, white caps on the lake as we're paddling, and we're paddling at about half the speed that we normally are. And so it was very difficult for Andrea and myself to judge distance as we were paddling, and we were trying to count reentrants going towards the next mandatory CP that was on the lake. And even the reentrants were hard to see. And Andrea made the comment, we were right up against the shoreline to try to avoid all the wind on the lake. But had we potentially backed off from the shoreline, we might have had better visibility into the reentrants, because we were counting, I think, 4 or 5. It was like the 5th reentrant south. And so anyway, we made it down to what we thought was the 4th reentrant. It was supposed to be we thought the 5th reentrant was where the CP was. And, we thought we still had one more to go. And so we were thinking we were trying to hurry with the dark zone. 2, another team had come up, and they didn't stop either. So, us, not being confident in our nav, thought, okay, well, surely that other team's not stopping. This isn't it. We still got to keep going. And so we just blew past it, right? And so we missed it, and it was right there. And so it was probably another 20 or 30 minutes where we realized we came upon, we think, the next one. But we didn't. Again, we missed that one too. But we just really didn't know where we were on the map. And then we were so cold, and we were trying to beat what we think is a dark zone-ish. We just didn't want to go back, and we had heard some teams did go back, and then it took them 2 hours with the wind to get back to where they were. And so another 2 hours on the lake cold was not appealing to any of us.
We're out of food for a long time too.
And
we
were out of food,
like 8 hours.
because we had spent more time on this leg than we had anticipated. We mentally, we were not in a good place at all. So long story short, we ended up missing, was it two of the, mandatory points, and then one of the pro points on that leg. And, in hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, we should have spent another few hours there going back and getting the points. But at the time, we were pretty dead set on getting to the TA, because we were cold. We didn't want to be out on the shore for 8-hour dark zone. And, we just really wanted to get to where we could have some, food and a little bit of rest.
Yeah. So I think you're being kind. Like, I knew it was on me. Like, I just feel like, when I get the maps, it's because we all think it's going to be kind of easy. Like, if it's hard nav, you don't give the maps to me. I can contribute, and I do, but what was hard right then, I think, is, I was looking at the map, and there's no lines on the map. So judging the distance, and it was the 4th reentrant we were looking for, but they didn't have water in them, and you couldn't really tell necessarily. There were some that looked small that were also reentrants, but were they the ones on the maps, and blah, 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 blah. But then, so judging how long it should take from that last point to the reentrant point, I just kind of eyeballed it, because there's no lines on the map. What do you call those lines? The north-south lines and the grid.
Grid lines.
No grid
lines. Yeah.
So I just kind of guessed it's like 4 or 4.5K. That's kind of loose, but I thought, oh, it's a paddle. We're gonna see it, no problem. We only have to count for reentrance. So I just kind of let my guard down a little bit. And then, if I had been really smart, I would have done what Mark Bollier taught us to do, which I'm sure a lot of people do this, but they take the string of your compass and put it along the route, and then that's how you can measure how far you had to go. And I would have known specifically. But we had also timed from the point to cross the bay, and we thought that was about 1K and thought that was about 17 minutes, which I rounded to about 20 minutes because we were going so slow and it's so hard. So I thought it would take us 20 minutes times 4 because I thought it was about 4. Anyway, an hour and 20 minutes later, we hadn't gone far enough. It didn't take us as long as I thought it would to get to that point. And then, like Caitlin said, there's a team right there also judging whether they should look. And they decided not to. And I think even another team was behind us and flew right by. So my confidence was I usually have a confidence problem with navigating as I should. Like our orienteering meet we did right before we left, I just did really terribly. I told my kids missing this point, and I felt so bad about it. And they're like, "Well, why did they give you the maps?" I'm like, yeah, it's all their fault. It's their fault for giving me the maps. It's not my fault. Anyway, I felt really terrible about that.
How low? So you guys were low at this point because the leg took longer. All of you were very, very low on food, and then my understanding is that Nick, you were the one with the least amount of food in your belly, I suppose, right?
Yeah, we were. I think we were all out.
Yeah, we were done. We were just done.
So what is it, like 8 or 9 hours of no food whatsoever, or more?
Yeah, I mean, we were probably at 6 hours that we hadn't had any real food, and then we're looking at a dark zone of I don't know, 8 hours or whatever before we're back on the water, and then we're looking at another, with the way the winds were and all, 3-4 hours of paddling. So we're looking at spending, I don't know, add it up, 15 hours of no food after we had already been rationing for a bit, and we spent that night just kind of freezing our butts off in Shopper. And so for us, if we spent that night, we would be freezing. We'd probably all be in the bothy bag and probably all inside of 2 bivy sacks, just cuddling for warmth and shivering because all our stuff was soaked. I mean, from the start of the race, we got rained on almost the entire time until we hit the water. And then when we hit the water, the open water, everything was just kind of super windy and all. So, spending a cold, shivering night with no food and going that long without food. I mean, for us thinking, again, not realizing the point values, it's very easy to be like, okay, we'll skip these and we'll be able to make it up later in the race. And also, hey, if we actually stay here, hit the dark zone, get all these, we're going to be, 15 hours without any food, absolutely destroyed. And then the next 2 days are going to be awful of racing. We're just going to be so slow because we're so caloric deprived and sleep deprived. So that was kind of, I think, part of the thought too, was we'll make it up later and we're not in the conditions to really spend another night out there, which we could have. It just would have been miserable. And I feel like that would have impacted our race super negatively as well. And then in Andrea's defense, it's super, you look at the 5 CPs on the map. So the map, if you were to zoom out as far, you're super zoomed in, so you can see a lot more detail. With the 1 to 50,000, it's zoomed way out. So if you go to the topo map and then zoom out a bit, yeah, probably in a little bit more. But if we can get to where it's around what the map looked like, you'll see that a lot of the details disappear. So when you're looking at, zoom in a little bit more if you can. Yeah, right about here is kind of what the map looked like-ish, maybe a little more in, but a lot of the details disappear. So yeah, this is perfect. So when you're looking at when you're looking at the detail that's in there, like you see right now, there's less detail. So really, there's 12 reentrants that you can see from the shoreline as you're paddling. that a lot of those aren't actually on the map. Like you can see them. So where the water is are some, but if you look in between, you just see all these other reentrants in there.
Yeah.
And when you're butt up on the shoreline, because of the wind is so bad, like if we were to go out 500, 600 meters into the water, we're in white caps. We can't see anything. We're just going to, get swamped out. And so instead we have to be right on the shoreline, and you can't see those 12, 15 reentrants. You can't tell which one's big reentrant up high and which one's not, because you're just next to the shoreline. You can't see. So even though we're, going along and it's like, okay, just hit the fifth one, it's not that way. It's like, okay, out of these 12 reentrants, you need to hit the fifth one. It's like, well, good luck figuring out exactly which one that is when you can't see them very well at all.
Like with
Thanks,
so it
hindsight,
was very difficult nav.
like with
I
hindsight,
think the only other thing I wanted to reiterate was that there was a dark zone that we already knew that we planned to break. Like I'm such a rule follower, like that was bothering me like the whole time. Like, oh, we're gonna break this rule, even though we know we're supposed to pull over, and we're just gonna, take whatever consequence we get. And yeah, we just knew we wanted to get to the TA at all costs, and we didn't have our glow sticks. I'm calling us out on that too. But when we left the TA before, we're like, well, there's no way we're going to be one of the faster teams and need the glow sticks. But we never thought about we might need the glow sticks because we're a slower team. And we also realized there was a dark zone. So we thought, well, we're not going to be on the water because there's a dark zone. So here we are, like we're getting ready to break 2 rules. I'm like, oh, I don't like this. Anyway, that factored into some because we knew we weren't going to be able to make it. And I still thought, well, the closer we are to making it, the more okay it will be, and I thought that was out of respect for the race organization. Like maybe there was a reason for permitting or whatever that they didn't allow us on the water. But then again, with the odd wording in the race book and all, I thought, well, it could be worse. So anyway, both those things too made us kind of hurry past our mistakes. So.
Yeah, and going back, I do think that we were trying to stay next to the shore. You can see that on the map where our line is directly on the shoreline.
Yeah.
And you can see these high points, 1432 and 1528. You can tell that there's a saddle between there because it's 1300 on the saddle. And so if we had moved out, we could have seen that there's this massive, reentrant between 2 peaks. But we were just so close to the shore, everything blended together because the cliffs were like a reverse skateboard ramp. It was like whatever, convex. So yeah, it just, again, this is just us sharing our thoughts, our learning on what do we do wrong and how to avoid this in the future.
And what
And
time
Andrea
was it that the
confessing her
safety
sins.
boat came around?
Oh, right after 10 o'clock, like 10:15.
Yeah, so then a safety boat comes along, and we don't know who it is or what they're doing there. We're just like going along our way, and they say pretty much, "How are you guys doing?" And we just said, I think I said we're excited to get warm or something like that. And they're like, who else remembers what they said? They directed us.
Yeah, they were kind of just asking us how we were doing, and I thought we were going to get in trouble for being out there in the dark zone. And we told them we were looking for that pro point, and they actually pointed out the pro point to us. It was behind us, and so Jason alluded to this, and I think in the award ceremony where they kind of spotlighted the pro point, and Andrea, I mean, she was the only one motivated to go up there and look for it. But this apparently was a hard point, and it was like up on a ridge. And none of the rest of us, I think, were really interested in searching for that pro point. God bless Andrea when she was up there trying to find it.
Well, I was still trying to make up for my big mistake of us missing the first 100 pointer. So I got out of the
on
boat.
the side of a wet cliff trying to scale it.
Well, I was just looking for a footpath. If I had seen like a footpath or evidence of where to go, then I'm sure you guys would have come along too. But it was a half-assed effort. But we saw the safety boat, and they're like being nice. Like they're not telling us, well, you better get off the water because there's a dark zone. And they didn't mention anything about that. And they knew we were going to the TA, so we kind of felt like all of a sudden we had a little bit of leeway. And we did have a little bit of leeway,
Okay.
but not enough motivation.
All right.
Right.
So let's you finally get to the TA after that paddle, all cold. You had your food, probably some sleep and everything else, because it was dark, it was night and everything, right? So then now you're gonna go on another bike leg, and you still had a bike leg in the beginning, but now you're gonna go to another bike leg that will take you to the O course. Now, in one of the bike legs, first of all, it was very windy, but in one of the bike legs, you also had to carry your bikes on your backs. Which was that? The next bike leg that is coming after this or before this?
There's the bike leg you're about to talk about.
Yeah. It was pretty
Yeah,
rough.
there's the next one where we did not have our pack wraps. The only bike leg we didn't, right? No one.
But you had to carry your bikes on your back, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that it was they warned us ahead of the race that we may consider figuring out a way to carry your bike on your back. And you're like, why is that? Like, why can't I just push it up the hill or whatever? What it turned out is that we had to traverse from one side of a mountain to the other, and there was no trail. And you have these grasses, kind of like what's behind Andrea and her thing, where it's like this knee to waist high grass, and you're going up very steep hills, and you just can't. You could try to push your bike, but the magic solution was to plop your bike on your backpack and walk with it on your shoulders. And it actually, like, I will use that in the future. It actually worked really well. It was way better than trying to push your bike uphill in wonky terrain.
So that was in the mountain, then crossing one mountain to the other, then, right?
Yeah, we were kind of moving our way up to a ridge line, and then we biked along a ridge line, which was absolutely stunningly beautiful. But we were, again, they like doing these races where you are off trail, like you are on this big expedition. You need to figure this out, and so bushwhacking, just for long periods of time off trail through the wilderness was the goal of the race.
And then you go to the first O course on that bike leg, which is called the Old Woman Hut or something like that. There's a hut there. Tell me about the Old Woman Hut and like how you go to the hut to sleep or something. Tell us about that. There was some trouble at some point at the end of the O course or something.
Nick was nabbing this. He loved the hut,
Yeah, so we get there and there's a warm hut, and we put our stuff down, and I think we immediately went out to the course. And so the goal was to go as fast as we can in the daylight through and finish at night. So I downed some caffeine and we all went off. And I think the first 2 points we hit spot on. The third one, we were a little off from hitting this trail, had to figure out exactly where that was, took that trail down to this other little shack, found another one, and then we start going to the next point, and I started to drone pretty bad. So then, even with the caffeine, we'd been up for a while. So then Chip took over and did a great job. And so from there, we hit a bunch of these points were just in different re-entrants, and there's a bunch of re-entrants again. But we actually did pretty good. Like, we nailed them all pretty well. And so then we had to like hike up pretty far to get out, like maybe, I don't know, 1,000, 1,200 feet. And then we're coming into the final point where the original plan when we kind of drew it in was to push to a road, take a road to the hut, and then from the hut move up a re-entrant, because in the same re-entrant was the checkpoint. And so that was kind of the plan. However, coming into the road, from a road bend, we could shoot in because we could just contour the elevation and it would save us from dropping and climbing. And so we could contour in over to where the point was. Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Yep. So the bend in the road on the left, far bottom left, that's where we originally shot into to try to save elevation from dropping down and up. And so we went there, and the clue was north end of the swamp, and you can kind of see that swamp there as well. So we shoot over and we nail the swamp, and it's kind of hard to tell it is, but we kind of pretty confident that's where it is. And so from there, Chip and I just head north and we start searching around, and we don't see anything. Now, what we didn't know is the point was pretty much right there. Like we were within like 30 meters of the point itself, maybe 20 meters. The point was just super small on top of this tiny rock with other rocks around it, so it didn't blow away. And
this is not a hanging point like an orienteering official. This is like a flat flag on a rock with a punch. It's like, really? Like,
it was not reflective either.
No. So at that point, like we nailed it, right? Like we shot off there, reset altimeters, pushed in, did all that, and we're on top of it, but it's not there. So in our minds, we're like, where the F is this? It's not adding up. So then we start to kind of reattack again. So we move around, check a bunch of stuff, kind of zigzag all over. And then we reattack a second time, I think. And at this point, it had been, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour of us going for this. And then we're at the point to where on the map, it shows a cattle fence. And the cattle fences are pretty accurate. So from the cattle fence where it turns, that would be the next attack point. And I remember we're sitting there in the howling wind. We've been looking around for about an hour or so. And in my mind, it makes sense to go to the hut and just reattack from the hut, because the hut's a known point. We can reset altimeters. We have to then move, I don't know, maybe 500 meters up, 600 meters up from there, up the reentrant, which it's already in. So we kind of got the terrain contour, set elevation. We can shoot an azimuth, and it's kind of all dead set to get back. And so in my mind, we should just do that. But I remember we were sitting there and Chip and Andrea are arguing for a couple minutes, or debating whether or not we're at the bend in the fence, or if the farmer maybe just offset the stake by about 5 inches. And after about three minutes of that, I'm like, we just need to get the fuck to the hut and just reattack from the hut and just go up the reentrant. And Chip didn't want to drop the elevation and then reclimb the elevation, which makes sense as well. And he was on the map.
Four topo lines, right? Because this is the point here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 topo lines or more.
About 400 feet of climbing.
And it's like, I don't want to go all the way down.
Let's just say
we are on top of the damn point.
And we were on top
all
of the
wanted
point.
to go to the hut.
Because it was warm and there was a fire.
Yeah, that became the running joke, is let's just go to the hut. Because they had a fire in there. It was warm as hell in that hut.
Speaking of which, my dog's in the freezing rain right now. Let me let him in.
Yeah. So, but that fence, like we're walking along the fence, and from one direction you look at it, it looks like a straight line. You look at it from the other direction, and there's just the slightest little kink. And sure enough, Chip thought that was the turn that we should attack from. I think we all looked to see, is this a bend in the fence or not? And if you can't tell if it's a bend in the fence or not, it's probably not.
So look at this. It's actually on the map. I just realized that we were here thinking that's the bend in the fence. If we just would have gone further, it's that bend. If you look at the angle that we shot in on, we would have shot right to the point. So yeah, we just picked the wrong bend.
We just needed to go to the hut.
We just need to
get to the hut.
Everything's better at the hut.
Sponsored by Pizza Hut.
Yeah. So if you notice this big squiggle, this was how long did we sleep? It's like,
ooh, look at that.
Oh, keep putting wood on the fire, guys. We were there for like 6 hours.
It was like, I don't know. Caitlin was running the sleep clock. You want to talk about the
sleep? we pretty much slept till morning.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long it was. I think three hours or so. I mean, we spent more time at the orienteering course than we expected to. We wanted to clear that course, in the evening daylight, but actually we ended up basically spending all night there because we took longer on that last point, which was actually supposed to be the easiest point that we were saving for the dark. And then we went to the hut. We may have spent, I don't know, between 3 or 4 hours sleeping and transitioning. And by the time we got up, it was light out. And then of course, during the day, we shot straight to the point from the hut. So we ended up spending more time there than we wanted. But that last point was much more difficult as far as visibility goes, because it really was just a punch hanging off a small rock. And we just couldn't see it at night. So it was probably good that we were able to see it in the morning and go straight to it. And then once we did that, we hopped on the bikes and we're off again.
And there were pretty crazy winds. Like I think we set the alarm and went to get up. And
Yeah, actually,
like blowing people over.
It was pretty windy and cold, and it rained that night. So it was probably good that we were able to sleep in the hut. And that was nice because the night before we were out in the cold. And so it was nice to get a quality sleep, I think, that night.
Yep.
So also just the terrain there, that the clue was north end of swamp. You couldn't discern the swamp from anything else around there. It all looked the same. You couldn't say, oh, there's the swamp and there's not the swamp. But I think we should mention the huts. Huts kept showing up, all along the course. And that is such a cool thing about New Zealand. Like you'll just stumble across a small building. They're all different. They're pretty unique. Some of them have bunk beds. Most of them do. And a lot of them had sinks and kitchen areas. And although they're really small, but it's such a cool thing about New Zealand. It made me want to go back and, plan a tromp on a track and go to a hut. So anyway.
All right. So after this whole course, you of course stumbled upon that one that was supposed to be the easiest, and you made it the hardest. You went to sleep there in the hut. You had a nice, good sleep on the hut, and then you jumped back into your bikes, and then you moved to the little town of Alexandra. That was a highlight, and there was an urban rogaine there. So start with the urban rogaine there on Alexandra, the town of Alexandra.
I think something to note between there on that bike leg. Couple things. One was it was so windy, we were like getting pushed uphill and we were pedaling downhill at spots depending which way we were going.
That is fascinating.
Cool. And then we actually had to get off and walk the bikes because we were like blowing off the thing up top. That was pretty cool. And then we descended. I mean, it was like a huge descent. I mean, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 feet of just like descending down. I mean, our brakes were shot.
And by saying that it was pretty cool, he means it sucked.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, I took a front flip and nailed my head. Forgot about that.
Oh, that's right. You had an accident there, right, Nick?
Just a concussion.
Yeah, Chip saw it.
I saw it. Yeah, I was like, it was like literally, I was like, and I know he's like military and has all the first aid shit. I was kind of like, do you need attention? Like, do we need to like secure your neck? How's any pain? Like, would you like me to help you, or are you on your own? Like, what do you want me to do here?
So did you eat some dirt, Nick, as well?
Yeah, it was bad. I wound up having to lay down for like 10 minutes after, and it was just wild. But yeah, my helmet's actually dinged up pretty good. I think I might have to get a new one. But yeah, but we're good now. So, but yeah, then dropping down. I mean, we were bombing down for a long time.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
And we kept guessing, like the race, they said it would be the longest downhill in ARWS history. Maybe single track, maybe not. We kept wondering, is this it? Is that it? I don't know. But I was so wanting it to be more enjoyable because like we'd made it to the top, but then we had to pedal all the way down. We had to pedal in the valley too. It's like we had to keep on pedaling. But the scenery made it amazing. But anyway, moving on.
All right.
Oh, Alexandra. That's what you were asking about.
Highlight.
Yes, because then after that bike leg, I didn't know about the crash in that section, but after that bike leg, you go to the town of Alexandra where they have an urban rogaine in this little town. That was a highlight. A bunch of cool points there. So tell us about it.
I'll tell you about the very first point because I'm the only one that read the sign. There was a point where there was like a water wheel and we had to put down how many buckets there were on the water wheel. And so Chip starts like doing some sort of, well, if there's 3 in each segment, and he's doing some like multiplication, and Caitlin's counting by ones. I don't know what Nick was doing, but then I was like, there's a sign over here. We should just check this out. And sure enough, the sign said how many buckets there were. But Caitlin also got the right number by counting. Anyway, that was...
Nick was checking his head. He just had a ding in his helmet.
Yeah, he's still...
I think I was counting buckets as well.
Yeah.
And then we picked it up and started hustling.
Oh, we really picked it up.
Oh, yeah, because we went to the restaurant. And so at the restaurant,
Yep.
it was right across the street from the water wheel. And I don't know what we were talking about, but we were talking about how much time we have left, how we'd been doing, and blah blah blah. And then Nick says, "Well, I really think we are hustling." We're sitting down in a restaurant waiting for our food to come. It was just a really funny moment.
Yeah, we just like, it was like 5 seconds later, we just looked at each other and started laughing.
This is hustling.
This is us hustling.
And there were
Hustle
ropes in that.
loading.
There were
Hustle
also
life.
ropes in there, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a rock climbing section. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's really cute, like in between houses. Just a really cute little climbs.
Yeah.
Fun.
And then the clock. There was a nice massive clock in the side of a mountain or something right there, which was just so beautiful, right?
It was super cool. We had to hike up to the close enough to be able to read what was on the back of the minute's hand. It was like a big clock, kind of like, you see the Hollywood sign, like you see a big clock. So it was a cool little hike. And we left town and found out that clock lights up. Like it's really pretty.
Nice.
So we were there long enough to see it in the dark too. So we took
And it was an
our
analog
time.
clock. So like the millennials are like, what is that thing on the side of the
We
And
also
then, of
stocked
course,
up.
so you're now well fed, burgers and everything. You took burgers to go also, and then you're in transition area where Heidi meets with you. And I don't know if I can share my screen. I want to just play that video because I like it. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can I share my screen or?
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
want to play this video because I really, really like this video.
Okay, so let me just show this to people at home. No, they're not. Adventure racing is not hard. They must not tell you when they get home. There's all kinds of problems. This is massive. I just spotted it, and they are just all sharing obviously one spoon. Adventure racing, we all are one. Oh, because I don't let them tell you anything that this is hard or difficult. They're having big burgers, ice cream ciders. They're having the time of their lives. It's been one of the most challenging races we've done. I believe you. I believe you. Anyway, so all the best, guys. It's not done yet, huh?
All right, so Caitlin, tell us about the big tub of
Yeah,
ice.
so-
Was that a community ice cream? I think like one spoon for
in-
everybody.
Indeed, and I think we about all of us, helped to put it away, except Chip if it was a gluten free. But there was a grocery store in town, and so we definitely prioritized making it back to that store before it closed. And we had not seen any like civilization up to that point as far as stopping in stores or restaurants. So we were really excited to get there and get some food from the store. And so I don't know, I bought a ton of stuff, and I was like, God, I want some ice cream. And so I bought that whole thing of ice cream, and I think we about put it away. We did a pretty good job on it. But yeah, that was certainly a highlight of the Urban O, is being able to eat in the restaurant and visit the store. And I think it really lifted our spirits going into the night paddle. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah. And it was a beautiful day. Like the weather was good. The sun was out. It was amazing. The other thing, just so you know, like this was one of those races where it was a little bit hard to make weight. So like, I know, I'm not sure how Nick and Caitlin did it, but Andrea and I had planned packing 100 calories per hour of each leg on moving hours. So we went in knowing we've got to source food along the way or we're screwed. Like you can't do an adventure race at 100 calories per hour, even at the pace we were going. So yeah, it was like when we saw the restaurant, it was like we need to eat a lot, and then we need to go by the grocery store and get more food because we're going to run out.
And I think we were dealing with trauma from running out of food on that first leg or second leg or whatever. So
yeah,
it was kind of like squirrels where they start finding food and like, packing it away in places. So yeah, we just bought a ton of food and just packed it in, and we ate like kings and queens on the paddle.
Yep.
This might be the first race we've run out of food. Like we usually end up in a race with too much. So I guess it was about time we had a race where we actually didn't have enough. But yeah, I think we were all a little traumatized in multiple ways from our first night. But yeah.
And the amount of effort, like I guess a lot of times teams look at it saying, what's our pace going to look like? Let's just say the C to C, right? Relatively flat, predictable. You can say, oh, we're going to go really fast. We need to eat 200 calories per hour or 250 per hour. I mean, your body can't eat but so much. And then the slower teams could say, oh, I'm going to do 100 calories an hour. I mean, we went into this race going, we know we're not going for the podium. We know we're gonna push, but we're not gonna be like killing ourselves. But meanwhile, then we find out we've got our pack rafts and our bikes, and we're pushing them uphill. And the amount of effort we were putting forth was like 200 calorie effort when we were planning on a pace of 100 to 150 calories. But just the sheer amount of weight that we had and the steepness of the hills, it was a very heavy, physically intensive race for sure. So I think we
And the
burned
cold
more
weather, I think,
calories than
too.
we were expecting.
Yeah, when you come out of Alexandra, you have to carry both bikes and pack rafts.
Yes. Yeah, we
So then-
crafted with the bikes. Yes.
Yes, and then you wanted to, if I'm not mistaken, you wanted to take originally the route you wanted to take was the east path to try to go ahead and get that point on the east side of the river and then bike there, but then you figure out that you couldn't, I mean, you were not able to do that, so you had to go up that mountain and then go ahead and you have to put your boats anyway, and then the bikes and boat anyway, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Andrea, do you want to get into that one?
Sure. So yeah, we left that TA with our pack rafts and our bikes, but we were riding our bikes to where we thought we would cut off some time because the wind had picked up again. So we thought, well, we'll ride our bikes as far as we can. And there were trails on both sides of the river. And so we picked the far side of the river because the point was on that side of the river. And we didn't know the condition of either of the trails, but we got to the trail that we intended to take and realized it was pretty much single track and that we were completely weighted down and not able to manage that trail well enough to make up time riding it. So we passed a place where we could put in, and we're like immediately thinking, you know what, we should just go ahead and take it, cut our losses now. So we did. We put in earlier than we wanted to, but the bike riding on that side of the river wasn't so good anyway. We found out later on the other side of the river was a very rideable trail, and that we could have done that and put in and gone across the river to get that point. So our plan did not pan out, but we made it work. We got ourselves in the river, and actually having bikes on your pack rafts is really not that challenging. We found it pretty comfortable, and we had practiced how we were going to stabilize them, and it worked well. And from there, it was just a matter of putting our head down and paddling. So we paddled. We kind of had to focus enough to make it to where we knew there was going to be a hut. So we all kind of caffeined up and made our way down. It went pretty well. I don't remember any hiccups. And then we got to the hut, which we were excited to see so that we could have yet another rest. I mean, once you get a certain few days into the race, it's kind of like you're racing to your next sleep. Like your goal is like to whatever brings you a little bit of relief. Like I was racing to that hut because I thought relief. I can stop thinking about where we're going and stop moving and be able to eat. And so that was exciting. We slept there overnight. I don't know how long. Maybe Caitlin remembers that. Maybe you could take it from there.
Yeah, I think we slept about 3 hours again, right till daylight. And that was a good stop. And so yeah, right at daylight we got up and we were ready to go again. And so yeah, I mean, that was a good paddle for us. I think Andrea did really well navigating at night, which is usually difficult for us on the paddle. And we got all the points that we wanted to on that leg. So that was a good morale booster for us.
Sang a lot of songs.
Yeah, I was falling asleep. I was having a
Chip was falling asleep, but he made it.
Oh, that's right. We tethered up for a short time.
Tethered up, yeah.
Which was not really great for our progress and thinking ahead, like maybe next time Chip needs to sleep, I should get in the back and he should get in the front. Anyway, we tethered up. You probably slept for a half an hour. Went along like that, maybe. I don't know.
It was a while.
I forgot that was not very fun. But you perked up after
With
you
the
woke
bikes.
up.
Yeah. Oh, it was bad. It was a beautiful paddle. At least it wasn't raining and freezing cold.
Yeah, the weather was nice.
So you go on the paddle, you go to the hut, you had a nice red in the hut there on the river, and then you go to the end of the dike, you're back on your bikes again, and then we're gonna go and you proceed to what the stage 6, which is called the Magnificent Stage. And this Magnificent Stage includes 2 paddle points with a dark zone. It includes a small, nice, neat canyon, and it also includes a very, very long trek. So which one out of this magnificent phase or magnificent stage, which should we tackle first? The little canyon points or the paddle points?
Probably canyon. The canyon was simple, so it was just I don't know, maybe an hour. You just go on a road for a couple hundred meters, hop in on a trail, take a trail for like 30 minutes, walk in, and then you just hop in a creek and you go down, and it's kind of like a canyon. It's a smooth rock with little pools that you're jumping in and kind of hopping around and jumping in through and hiking through. And so it was super fun, low risk, quick, nice, easy. I mean, it's really neat to have something unique that close to a TA that you just kind of out and back for fun. So I thought it was good.
And it was a slot canyon also, right? With narrow walls and stuff.
Yeah, it was, yeah, at times.
Nice.
Yeah, at times. Mm-hmm.
And then you go on this big final O course, which the points were what? 1 or 2 points each versus the 200 points you lost on the first battle. So here we are. I was told to ask Nick. I was told to ask you about the Deadfall Boogeyman.
The Deadfall Boogeyman.
Oh yeah. So when we're looking at this, and there's all these points, and we know we're not getting them all, right? And so we made a decision. We want to get to the Alpine Lake because it was probably going to be beautiful, which it was. So it was our decision.
We needed a bath.
Yeah, and on the way back, there were these tempting points in these reentrants in the woods off the map. But just like the other reentrants, it's like, okay, we see 4 on the map, but there's probably like 15 out there. And so my thing was, look, we shouldn't go in there for those points at night based on like how we've been doing nav wise. So if we go in there, like, I think we're going to get fucking lost and turn around. And long story short, we push in at night, and a point that's 500 meters from us in the first reentrant turns into 2 hours before we're back out, and we got so fucking lost. But yeah. I know talking to Team Expedition Canada in daylight when we were moving up, they were pushing in for it in daylight, and they got lost as well, and took them 2 hours in daylight. And they're really good navs, and they're used to like the BC mountains. And then at a cafe after we were talking to one of the guys who helped set the point, and he said setting the point, they did map compass, got to where they thought it was, checked the CalTopo GPS, and realized they were in the wrong reentrant there. So it was a surprisingly tough checkpoint. And so, so here you go. So, okay, so there's a lot of red, so it's hard to see. So the black dotted Titan Rocks is no longer there. And there's that red line that kind of goes down along it, kind of like to a sideways V. That's the real trail that we went up and down. And where it hits that apex that we shot kind of southwest along that reentrant and then up and over, that was kind of our path in for that loop to go into that reentrant and out. And so here you see the spur. Well, the spur, there's a reentrant on that spur that's not in the map. That's a pretty decent sized reentrant that we got messed up in. Expedition Canada got messed up in. Allegedly, the guy who said it, that he got actually messed up there and had to use the GPS to get the real thing. So somehow we ended up in there all over that thing, and then eventually decided we're bailing and started to move out. And then somehow Andrea plopped us right onto the point, and we found the point, which was amazing. Yeah. And then from the point on the way out, we then like started zigzagging all over, and our altimeters had drifted a bunch again, even though we had just reset them. And so when we got to the point, I remember the point was supposed to be at like whatever altitude 80. So we'll say 680 or 580, I think. And when we got there, it was like 540. And so I was like, what the heck? Like, either it was set wrong or it drifted. Most likely it drifted.
We had just
And
reset.
so,
It's just
yeah, we just reset. So it was just the sunset, like it literally drifted in the matter of like an hour. And so that's part of why we were too high as well. But anyway, from there on the way back, we're moving along and we're looking at the altimeters. We're like, shoot, we're way too low. But then we remembered that we had drifted low. So we kept pushing and eventually found that trail again. And it was a very happy moment that we had, defeated the jaws of the boogeyman in the woods at night.
Yeah, I think so we called it the deadfall boogeyman. I think because like that morning Nick woke up and he's like, you know what, guys? I think we shouldn't go for these points. There's going to be a lot of deadfall in there. And so,
yeah,
deadfall was the fear. And we had kind of decided all of these points are worth 2 points. Like it's not going to do anything for our score. We already screwed ourselves by skipping the paddle points in leg 2. So at this point, we're like, we just want to have the best experience. So we went up to the lake and a Chip got in the water first, I think. He kind of slowly got in. I got like tiptoed in. I went maybe waist high. And then Caitlin took the challenge.
But she just went in?
Well,
he cannonballed in or dove or something.
Well, I told them I was going to cannonball in. And they're like, no, you can't cannonball in. They're like, well, you can dive in because it was, it was really rocky. I think there was a few.
Go ahead first.
Anyway, go ahead first. The cannonball.
Yeah, anyway, I wasn't going to do it until either Chip or Andrea challenged me. Like, oh, I bet Caitlin won't dive in. And that's all it took.
Yeah.
And I ate Oreos nice and dry and warm.
I dove into that
water?
lake. It was
cold water?
No. I stayed on the rock nice and dry and ate Oreos.
Yeah. I wanted a legit bath. And Andrea, I don't know, you just wanted the experience. Caitlin just went all in and just dove in. And then
was it cold, Caitlin?
This is cold. I was
it
like,
was
yes,
freezing. It took my breath away.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was just saying that because we had gotten the points that we thought were worthy of getting, like something that would have a view that we'd have a really cool experience getting. And we did, because finding your way up there in those mountains with those broad, wide ridges was really unique and would be really difficult to navigate at night. So we got through that, and then we're descending down in the dark. But that's where it's kind of like, well, we all knew getting more points wouldn't really help our score any. But we were already starting to say, well, the race is coming to an end. We don't want to end too early. And, Chip loves to find checkpoints. And for some reason, I too was like thinking, we can't end this too early either. Like we do need to try to get these points, even though the deadfall boogeyman's out there. It really turns us around.
Endless reentrance in the dark.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fear was warranted. We got turned around and there was a lot of deadfall and there were a lot of reentrants that weren't there. But I feel like I kind of tried to keep my head level a little bit. And we were all going off of our altimeters when it was already kind of flat. So it's like not the right tool to be using at the time. So I remember stopping Chip and saying, what direction should we be going? And he'd say, we're going along this altitude at this. No, what direction are we going? So I asked him 3 times. He finally said northeast. And so anyway, what we ended up doing was checking the reentrant further. And then we went back to our point. And then I was like, oh, I hear the water running and it's going the right direction. There's a bigger reentrant over here. And so it was still accidental that we found that CP, but it was essentially just a parallel error. And we kind of psyched ourselves out. Like, we can solve problems like that. And I mean, we actually did solve it, even though we had given up on the point. We're like, oh, okay, we've been out here long enough. We just need to get out of here. And in so doing, we found the point. But I think
we were tired.
Yeah, and realizing what the reality is okay, there's more on the map than we know, and let's go back to simple things, instead of letting ourselves get freaked out. And then I remember like we just have to follow the water, and you guys are like trying to cut corners again. I'm like, no, I'm going in the water and following the water. Like, I did not want to get out of the stupid water. Our feet are wet anyway. And any more deadfall that we have to walk around is going, or cliffs or whatever in our way, is going to maybe make us think the main water, not the water. We dropping down that water. I think I was the only one in the water because I was like, we got to get out of here. And the water is the way, you know? So anyway, the water took us to the trail. But if Nick hadn't realized the drifting of the altitude, then it would have all fallen apart. So it was a real team effort in there, is what I'm trying to say. Even though we all had our boogeymen out there, you know, after us, we got out and we got our extra 2 points that meant nothing, but we got that
moral victory.
Yeah,
moral
you didn't
victory.
actually leave a point. It's really hard when you're going for a point and you give up on it, you walk away. So I was really glad that we randomly stumbled across that point on your random let's walk through the water path. Nick and I were like, oh, we just need to do this and this, we'll be out of here. And then we get up on the hill, we're like, wait a second, the compass isn't lining up with the like,
where the hell are we?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Anyway.
All right. So then I think we covered most of everything, right? I think maybe talk about when you guys ran out of the jet boil gas.
Oh yeah.
You had to eat very tasty dehydrated meals, but with cold. Right?
The dehighs, they call them dehighs in New Zealand, apparently. They really saved the day. They had a different brand. I can't remember the name, but they were green bag. Nathan Favre actually has a dehy brand. I think it's called Real Meals. But all of the dehydrated foods that we were able to get at the grocery store is really, really good. Like better. Like you go to REI, I apologize, REI, but like most of it tastes like crap other than Mountain House. All their foods tasted really good. So it didn't matter if it was cold or hot. We ate a ton of dehy's while we were out there.
Yeah, I guess the last 2 legs were not not as challenging as the rest of the course. It was kind of a nice way to get us back to the end, but it was still, a lot of work left, and
you had to
we
paddle.
felt good about.
Yeah, the last 2 legs were just a nice paddle and a very relatively flat ride to the end, which is amazing. After so many mountains, the last leg is just a flat ride.
Yep.
Yeah, it was nice. And it was and the paddle was fun. It was like not even class 1 river flowing. There were some trees that were over in spots where you might get caught up in them, but not flowing super fast. And there were a couple times you had to get out and push, which is fun because it stretches your legs out and you go. And it was a very enjoyable paddle, I think, coming in. We had a little bit of a headwind, but not much. And so they said that if the headwind kicks up, it can be a pain, which I could totally see. But yeah, pretty mellow paddle. That was fun. I enjoyed the paddle.
Yeah.
All right.
I think even though we did it really well, apparently I think it was like 10 or 13 teams swam. Like they got flipped over by the strainers and went swimming. So maybe it's because we were on a beautiful sunny day or we're sunscreen and walking around stuff. We could see what was coming. But the teams that did it at night, I think some of them got whacked.
I could see that at night for sure.
Yep. Yeah.
I think all in all, though, we talked a lot about what we did wrong, but I think it was a really great race. I think we didn't end up saying, I guess I don't have those big feelings of regret. Like, yeah, we would have done things differently, but overall, it was an amazing race to have done. It was really challenging, and I know Caitlin and I kept saying, "Oh, we've done a lot of firsts in this race." Like, what were some of them?
Yeah, so it was the first time that we carried the bikes on our back. It was the first time we had bikes on the pack raft. First time we carried our pack raft gear almost everywhere we went. First time we're navigating these huge mountains at night in hailing weather. It was a lot of firsts, and I felt like every point we went for, we got right. I think that first night obviously really kind of set the tone for the rest of the race, which was okay. But I think we, after we went on that lake paddle, we finally got to that TA. I think we settled in and we raced our race, and maybe, we didn't go as fast as we normally would have, but I think we can be proud of, that we did most of the course, and that we were able to get a lot of the points and finish mid-pack ish on a really challenging off-trail course that we're not used to, right? And I think we made the comparison with Ecuador. It was just a complete 180 from Ecuador, right? Ecuador was tough, but there wasn't much nav involved, and this was a extremely nav intensive strategy, more strategy type of course that was really challenging. And I think we came out of the race appreciating that. So yeah, so it was fun. I mean, I think we did learn a lot from it.
And one thing I will add, it looks like maybe that's why most of the New Zealand teams are top in all of the races. They do have some very nice training grounds there.
Yes.
Makes everybody else makes every race they go to easier, I guess.
Yeah,
Yes.
we said that multiple times.
Yes.
That we now know why the Kiwis are such great adventure racers. Yeah.
And then, of course, the views. Who's going to talk about the views?
We spent a lot of time above the vegetation line. Like it very little of this race was where you can't see. It was like just mountains everywhere you look. Every corner was just amazing. You want to stop and take a photo. It was so hard pushing your bike up the hill, but it was great to take a break because you just turn around and you go, wow. And then you take 50 more. I was like, actually had a thing of M&Ms, and I would take 50 steps and eat an M&M and 50 steps and eat an M&M. I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to make it up to the top of this hill because you got your pack raft and your bike, and it's so steep that you can't push your bike. So you're having to like half carry your bike, half carry this stuff. Yeah, but the views made it worthwhile.
We should mention too that Chip had the bike repair kit that did have a derailleur in it. I mean, that's heavy in and of itself.
Heavy.
He had the pack raft repair kit. He had the first aid kit. He had the bothy bag. He had a pack raft. And I don't know, I've never seen him that loaded down. And when he's the last up the hill, like, whew, we're
We're double meal.
And
you were double meal this time.
Caitlin and Nick show up with this cute little backpack for the 24-hour epic. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is like this. We got to carry this massive stuff. Yeah. So we learned our lesson on that a little. I think next time they'll probably bring bigger packs because you needed space to like load down stuff, and so some of it was by default that I only had the big pack that I could carry all the crap.
So yeah, but all of us were carrying maximum weight, I feel like. I mean, that's the most weight I've ever carried. And this race, not every race does this, but this race made me realize what I could do. Like, I don't think I've ever been pushed to carry that much for that long. And I was really dreading that bike ride with all the pack raft stuff. And turns out it really wasn't that bad. Like, I could do it again, and I'd have
Caitlin could barely move her neck.
Oh, I know.
Oh yeah, and so first of all, Andrea killed that bike ride with all the pack raft stuff. She was way ahead of all of us. She biked like the whole thing while we're pushing our bikes up the hill with all of our pack raft stuff. And then I don't know what happened with my neck. I think I strained it when I was carrying the bike, but I mean, going downhill, I had to stop every, I don't know, 5-10 seconds because I couldn't even hold my neck up. So so we were definitely feeling the weight for sure of the course.
All right. Anything else we're missing?
I think
take it from here, Chip.
Yeah, I mean, it's for anybody that's an experienced expedition racer, definitely put this race on your bucket list. They are running it again. It's late February. I don't know the dates, but it's late February next year. The Jason and Andy did a great job. The volunteers did a great job. The media was good. Of course, Tomas, your commentary was amazing. The live tracking, like the tracking system, was the best in the world. The ability just to zoom in like we did on this podcast and show you the terrain and where the stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that went really right during this race. We had one of our worst races from a strategy standpoint. We didn't like the point system so much, but whatever. It's the way that they wanted it. This was a very physically strenuous race, hard navigationally. It's a big challenge, but it's worth it because of the views. You're in New Zealand. I keep saying
Big mountain.
everything in New Zealand is better. Like it doesn't matter, pick a metric compared to the United States at least. I really, really, really liked the country. Not only the race, but we were there for a couple weeks ahead of time. It's an amazing.
So you're doing this race again next year then?
Yeah, we're gonna put it on the calendar and hope that we do it, and we'll probably stay for a month. But yeah, I really, really, I'm gonna prioritize our race calendar around this race. Definitely don't miss it.
I
Yeah.
think we should mention too that the design of the course was really cool. Although we didn't like appreciate the point differences, the ability for teams to choose a less challenging way to go to actually finish, there were plenty of options. So, if you're not thinking you're up to the technicality of it, you don't necessarily need to be like it's like other races. You can skip the pro points and it was a very hard race, but it's still a race that can be attainable and you can choose, where your limits are, I think.
Yeah. Just be ready to carry a lot of weight and go up and downhill. Like this is not the C to C. You're not taking your daughter in a little carriage from TA to TA and finishing this race. It is physically extremely strenuous. And you're exposed. There is whatever the weather is, you are going to experience it. You are not protected by vegetation and trees and all this stuff that we have in the United States, or at least in the East Coast. So either way, yeah, we loved the race. They did a great job. Sign up, do it next year.
All right. So what's next? I know C2C is coming, but what's next after C2C?
Yeah, I'm running with people I've raced with before, with Lewis and Brenda, and then also we got Mark Miller joining the team for the first time. But he was up there actually in Alaska with Nick doing volunteering.
Mark's awesome.
Team dropped out, so we've known Mark for quite a while, and he did a great job. And he whooped my butt in one of the what do you call it, the national solo championships. He whooped me on there, so I was like, so I think he's going to be a good addition to the team. And so I've
raced with Mark. Mark's great to race with. Really good teammate. He's funny, dry humor. He's good. He'll fit right in.
He's quiet. That's the thing. He's quiet. You never know what the quiet people are thinking. People like me,
yeah,
blurt it out.
He's thinking funny thoughts.
He's thinking funny thoughts. Good. So as long as he's middle school like me and you, Nick, we're going to fit right in.
Perfect.
And then after that, I guess we got Morocco. We've got Nick again, and Andrea and Michelle Fouché from Adventure Addicts Racing. So we've raced with her before a couple times, Bend, Oregon, and Endless Mountains. So that's the next one, and then the summertime we are still planning our calendar, and
nice.
Some Western states on the calendar. But we'll see, and of course World Championships.
That's an awesome busy schedule for these few months.
Always,
yes. So cool. So I think we covered everything. Tomas, thanks so much for doing all your commentary, keeping friends and family up to date on what's going on with the race. And of course, keeping us on track here so that we didn't go more than 2 hours,
Yes. That's what I was trying. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks everybody. And we shall see you next time. And for those of you that enjoy this podcast, please consider sharing it with your friends, liking, subscribing, all of that kind of stuff. And that'll keep us motivated to keep putting out crazy content and telling us our sometimes stupid stories that we do during races. So
thanks for listening.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
All right, bye.
Thank you, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment. To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for ThisAbility Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.